Madam President,
Senator from South Carolina.
I'd like unanimous consent to enter into a colloquy with the senator from Tennessee.
Without objection.
I know the senator is supposed to be chairing a hearing here in a moment, but you're the ranking member on foreign relations. I want to compliment you and Senator Menendez. Y'all have been a very effective team, and the subject matter is Iran. The 20th of July will be here shortly. So, Senator Corker, what's your view of where we stand with the Iranian nuclear program, and what are your concerns?
Well, first of all, no one has taken a more important role in our foreign policy and security issues than you, and I want to thank you for that. I know on my last trip to Afghanistan, you were there serving your reserve duty there, and I want to thank you for the many contributions to all of these debates. I want to say that I think, like many in this body, when the initial agreement was put forth and it had a 6-month extension on it, there was a lot of concern. And what I'm concerned about, and the senator from South Carolina I think may share some of these, is that what we're going to end up with is a series of rolling interim agreements. What we have is Iran doing everything they can to evade the sanctions that have been put in place. We have countries that see the opportunity possibly for Iran to come out from under being a rogue state, and I'm worried that we're putting ourselves in a situation where we're losing all of the leverage that Congress, working with the administration, but Congress led on in putting these sanctions in place. So we're coming up on July 20th. I was very disappointed that, in essence, in March, the administration agreed to the fact that Iran would be able to have centrifuges to enrich uranium. It was something that was just, to me, at the beginning of a negotiation, to give one of the biggest things you can possibly give to a country like Iran on the front end, put us in a very bad position. But here's my concern. It is July the 17th. This agreement ends on July the 20th. I really believe that we're losing the leverage that all of us worked so hard to put in place. I'm worried that the coalition that we have is dissipating, and it feels to me like Iran is rope-a-doping us on this agreement. So what I hope is going to happen, I know you and I are going to be in a briefing later today, I hope the administration is going to share with us very clearly what the gaps are between where they are and where Iran is. It is my hope that that gap is going to be very, very narrow. I don't think that's going to be the case. My sense is that the administration is going to ask for an extension over the next few days, and that concerns me. And here's what I hope Congress will do. I hope Congress somehow will have the ability, through the majority leader's efforts and all of us on the floor, to weigh in on any final agreement that's put in place. I think that is very important. I know that you've tried to produce legislation to make that happen. I've done the same thing. Secondly, I hope that the administration will agree that there will be no more extensions, period. That I'm pretty sure they're going to be asking for one. It's unfortunate. When you put in place an agreement on the front end that you have that ability, it doesn't create the essence, it doesn't create the focus, if you will, that's necessary to bring this to a conclusion. And again, what I hope will happen is that Congress will have a final say on whether any removal of sanctions, Go ahead. That's all right. Not supposed to sit during a colloquy. Is that?
I learned something.
Yeah. But my hope is that that before any type of sanctions relief takes place, that Congress will have the opportunity to weigh in. I had a long conversation yesterday with our lead negotiator. I shared these same concerns, that I just feel the moment slipping away from us. I think all of us want to see a diplomatic solution. I don't think there's anybody on this floor that wants to see anything less than a great result diplomatically. But I think many of us are concerned that we're losing our leverage, time is slipping away, the coalition is dissipating. Some of the parties, as you know, have differing interests now. We've had some conflicts arise over the course of time where some of our partners in these negotiations we're at significant odds over. With Russia right now, we have the issue in Ukraine and Crimea. And with China, we have issues in the South and East China Sea. So all of this is making me very concerned about our ability to reach a diplomatic solution, even though I want more than anything on this issue, more than anything, I want us to have a solid diplomatic solution that allows us to go forward and know that Iran does not have the ability to break out and become a nuclear threat to the region, to the world, and certainly create instability. And I yield back to my great friend and colleague from South Carolina.
I'd like to thank the Senator from Tennessee for his leadership on this and many other things. So we're working together. We hope to make this bipartisan, that there is an agreement reached with the Iranians, and I agree, I hope there will be, that Congress can have a say about that agreement. You know, President Obama felt like he needed to come to Congress to get approval to enter into Syria. You led the effort. You passed a resolution in the Foreign Relations Committee, you and Senator Menendez working together. You delivered Republican votes, tried to help the president. He drew a red line, nothing happened. So if you believe you need input from the Congress about going into Syria, I hope the president will understand that the Congress wants input when it comes to the Iranian nuclear program. Matter of fact, I hope we'll demand it, because of all the decisions President Obama will make in 2 terms as president, on the foreign policy front, this to me is the most consequential. Why do I say that? The Iranian regime with a nuclear capability is a nightmare for the world. Senator Corker, do you agree with me, based on your travels in the region, that if we allow the Iranians to have a robust enrichment capability, and what am I talking about? Taking uranium and enriching it to the point that they can use it for commercial fuel to run a nuclear power reactor. The problem with enrichment is that you can go beyond making commercial grade fuel. You can actually use that process to make a bomb. And without enrichment capability, you can't make a bomb. So they're demanding a right to enrich. And it was, I think, given away in March was a huge mistake.
Yeah.
If you made a list of countries that you would not trust to enrich uranium based on their behavior and their disruptive nature, I would put Iran on top of the list. My fear is that we're about to do with the Iranians what we did with the North Koreans. Yeah. That you have a deal on paper that gives them an enrichment capability to be contained by UN inspection, and in North Korea, the rest is history. When it comes to the Iranians, I'm not going to turn our fate over as a nation to a bunch of UN inspectors trying to contain their robust enrichment program. I know Israel will not. But here's the ripple effect. Do you agree with me that any right to enrich we give the Shia Persians in Iran, the Sunni Arabs are going to insist on an equivalent right?
You know, you're exactly right. I was in the region this year. And, you know, there's tremendous concern about, obviously, Iran breaking out in this regard. And candidly, lots of conversations about ways for them to compensate for that, because they obviously want a counter. People in the region would want a counter to Iran being a nuclear-armed country. And by the way, as you know, with some of the proliferation that takes place, there are ways of buying those capabilities without even developing them yourself. So, yes, that's of major concern. And, you know, I tell you, our friend Senator Menendez on the other side of the aisle, who you work so closely with, I certainly don't want to speak for him, but I'm glad to use a frame of reference that he's used on so many occasions. And that is, it is one thing to dismantle their ability to enrich and produce a nuclear weapon. It is a whole other thing to just mothball. And what I fear is that we're creating a situation where, again, we have the countries who've come together, we have the sanctions that are in place, we let those sanctions dissipate, and all of a sudden, I think you know already, the economy in Iran is picking up, inflation has dropped. You allow those to dissipate. It took a lot of effort to put these sanctions in place. And again, there's a lot of differing interests today that didn't exist when these were put in place. And then all of a sudden you have a situation where they break out again because they've got those capabilities. They've been mothballed. They have not been dismantled. And not to speak of the fact that we don't know what's going on in Parchin. We don't know what may happen at the Iraq facility. I mean, there's all kinds of components. And again, I hope the administration will be very clear about the gaps that exist today. My sense is they are going to extend. And again, I have great concerns about what that's going to mean relative to getting to a good end.
Well, along those lines, Senator Menendez has been one of the leading voices in the Senate and the nation about having a cautious eye toward Iran. They have an enrichment capability. Over the last decade, it's grown dramatically. And this idea of moderate voices in Iran. The president of Iran was elected as the moderate. I don't believe that dichotomy really exists. This whole game of good cop, bad cop is going on in front of our eyes. This case, good president, bad Ayatollah. The Ayatollah, the supreme leader of Iran, weighed in a few days ago talking about centrifuges 10 times greater than they have today. I'm sure what he's trying to do is become the bad guy. When he puts a number of 190,000 out and you wind up with 15 or 20, it's like a good deal. I can promise you, one centrifuge in the hands of the Iranians is a risk. Thousands of centrifuges in the hands of the Iranians is stupid. We'd be crazy to let that happen. If they want a nuclear power program for peaceful purposes, sign me up. As a matter of fact, as part of any deal, I would put in the deal the ability for the international community, Russia, the United States, China, working together or separately to build a power plant inside of Iran to give them nuclear power as long as we control the fuel cycle. 15 nations have nuclear power programs that do not enrich. Canada and Mexico have nuclear power programs, but they don't enrich uranium. As a matter of fact, we're telling our friends in South Korea, don't begin to enrich. We're telling our friends in the United Arab Emirates, you can have nuclear power, but don't enrich. I would find it incredible for us to tell allies that we trust, don't enrich because it could set off unintended consequences, but we're agreeing to let one of the enemies of mankind have that capability because they're demanding it. Right. So I hope and I pray that a deal can come about that will neuter the nuclear ambitions of the Iranians and give them what they claim to want, a peaceful nuclear power program. But I don't believe that's what they want. I don't think you would be doing all the things they've been doing, lying and cheating and building plants under a mountain, if all you wanted was a peaceful nuclear power program. As a matter of fact, our intelligence community tells us the program they have today has been put to military use. They deny that, but we can't get to the bottom of it. What's your view about the likelihood of the Iranians lying about the fact that they've tried to militarize their program?
Well, I think based on past behavior, that would be one's expectation. And again, when we know there are facilities that are operating, we haven't been able to get into those facilities. When you look at the fact that one of the things that's not even being addressed is the whole delivery system, their ability to deliver the weaponry. I mean, none of this discussion thus far, to my knowledge, has anything to do with them developing capabilities to actually deliver a nuclear weapon. What I'm concerned about, I mean, you focused on the centrifuges, and it is the central issue, no question. And I think you have wisely pointed out how the Supreme Leader has tried to move the goalpost so far down the field that just getting to the 30 or 40-yard line looks like a good deal to us. But we also did the same thing on the front end of the deal by acknowledging in the preamble or the 4-page agreement that enrichment certainly could occur. But here's what's happening, I fear. On every single other portion, not just the centrifuges, the goalposts are being moved. In other words, the things that we thought were going to take place on the front end, whether it was the ARAC facility and what was going to occur there, what was going to happen in other pieces of the deal, all of which add up to very important elements or a final deal. I'm afraid that what's happening is the goalpost is moving on all of those as time goes on.
I couldn't agree more. As a matter of fact, dismantling has become something new. Removing highly enriched uranium. They have a big stockpile of highly enriched uranium. We're talking about diluting it, but the UN resolution called for its removal. So this deal is to the left of the UN resolution. As a matter of fact, this whole agreement is getting to the left of where the United Nations has been. How about this scenario? It's one thing to have fissile material in the hands of the Ayatollahs that could make a bomb, but they have a lot of highly enriched uranium still inside of Iran. What's the possibility in your mind of a dirty bomb, where they turn that highly enriched uranium over to some terrorist organization and it makes its way here without their fingerprints being on it?
Well, one of the ways that Iran has destabilized the region has been through proxies that it funds. And let's face it, until they got involved in Syria, as you've talked about, I know, on the floor, until they got involved in Syria through their proxies, Hezbollah, actually the moderate opposition was gaining ground. So their utilization of terrorist groups to achieve their ends, obviously, is their normal mode of operation.
Yes. I'm sorry, continue.
So when you think about the possibility of them being able to create, as you mentioned, a dirty bomb, which would create tremendous terror wherever it might have been implemented, that is something that I think is frightening, more than frightening, something that would be not quite as destabilizing as obviously having a full-blown nuclear weapon, but something that would be very damaging to world security.
And I know we are going to have a vote here in a second, but just sort of end our thoughts here. The reason 3,000 Americans were killed on 9/11 and not 3 million is that the terrorist groups who wish us harm could not find capabilities beyond the airplanes. They're trying. They're trying to get weapons of mass destruction, chemical weapons, highly enriched uranium, fissile material. My fear is that if a regime like Iran is given a capability to enrich, it will become a North Korea where they break out. And I will not turn the fate of the United States over with my vote to a bunch of UN inspectors. The only hope of a breakout is a bunch of UN inspectors. The real whole goal for me is to have a capability that is very small, face-saving in nature, that can't lead to a breakout. Don't have something robust that can lead to a breakout and expect the UN to protect us, because they can't. They didn't do it in North Korea. So at the end of the day, I think the decision we're going to make as a nation through our president, hopefully with congressional input, will be the biggest decision we have made as a nation on the foreign policy front in decades. Because if we get this wrong, if we allow the Iranian Ayatollahs to achieve a nuclear capability, every Sunni Arab is going to want like capability, and we're on the road to Armageddon. Look at the Mideast and ask yourself, is this a good place to give people nuclear capability? Would they use it? Hamas is firing every rocket in its inventory, and they could care less where it lands. They hate Israel that much. The Sunni Arabs feel more threatened by the Shia Persians than they do the Israelis. It's commonly believed the Israelis have a nuclear capability. Not one Sunni Arab nation has tried to procure a weapon of their own to counter that presumed capability. Every Sunni Arab state has told me and you and everybody else who will listen, if the Shia Persians get a capability, we're going to match that capability, because they see that threat as existential. Israel sees the threat with Iran, with a nuclear capability in the Iranian hand, as existential. I see it as existential to the United States. We have an opportunity here through negotiations to end this well. But what I hope we will not do is through negotiations create a scenario where they break out like the North Koreans. If I've got the choice between a bad deal through negotiations that will lead to a nuclear-armed Iran over time and military force, as distasteful that might be, I'm going to pick military force, because we have to stop their ambitions to become a nuclear nation. If we don't stop them, it would be like, in my view, allowing Hitler to have had the bomb when you could have done something about it.
Well, to close out, and I want to thank you again for your tremendous contribution to this debate and every foreign policy debate that we have. The President did seek congressional approval on the authorization for the use of military force in Syria. It was not something that he had to do, but he sought it, and I'm glad that he did. And I was proud to be a part of writing the agreement with our chairman and other members of the committee to give him the power to do that. And actually, to be candid, I regret that things took the course they took. But the president elected to do that. As you mentioned, a nuclear-armed Iran is on a whole different scale. And what I hope will happen is the president will agree that there will be no more extensions if they ask for one in the next few days, and I'm almost certain that that's what's going to happen. But number two, I hope he will commit to letting Congress weigh in on the final decision. I actually think that will be useful to them in the negotiations. I really do think that having a backstop would be useful to them. But if the president doesn't agree to that, I hope we on our own will place legislation and pass it that ensures that that's the case. I yield the floor and thank the president for their patience.